Uh, Invest India CEO and Managing Director Deepak Bagla joining us. Are we going to have him on the screen here, Sakshi? Can you help me? I'm told he's skewed. All right, we have him. This is Deepak Bagla, head of Invest India. He has been camping there for us. And are you getting me, Mr. Bagla? This is Abhishek, this side from Pune.
Hi, Abhishek. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm getting you loud and clear.
Davos.
Fantastic to have you. You have been there for about a week. And I believe today is the last day of the World Economic Forum at Davos. And this time we are told that India sent a big contingent. And we were sort of news there. And we created a bit of a splash. Please share with the guests here, the panelists here, the audience here, and of course the viewers of Republic TV. How was India at Davos this time?
Good afternoon. And I just got the last bit of what I was hearing about the economic situation, which we were discussing. And I think that was exactly what the topic is here. But let me just start by saying everyone here was saying India is everywhere at Davos. In fact, at the main promenade, if you just walk down that road, every 10 steps, India was present. Either there was a Government of India lounge, a business lounge, and in fact, we had 3 of them. We had one where we had our business roundtables and meetings, more than about close to 24 of those, and all ranging from the discussions on India, which was either PLI, the opportunities in India, the inclusion, and all the other new programs, etc., which India has gone through. And I heard a little about the food program even during the midst of the pandemic. Everyone was discussing that even when the world was going through the most brutal time, and India itself was going through such a pandemic, not only were there focuses which was taking care of the pandemic very effectively, but more importantly, there were also actions being taken. For example, 800 million people getting food grains right through that entire lockdown. And more, very interestingly, there was much discussion on how business reforms continued at that point of time. So there's been a lot of confidence in the global investor community, which is what we are witnessing. And that is what also witnessed the presence and the interest which they've shown in India. Also, every 10 steps, I was telling you, we ourselves had another special lounge, which was for sustainability. And everyone, again, was discussing India's steps and India's political leadership, which has focused on this critical pillar of growth going forward, and how the kind of reforms, and not just the reforms, but impact-oriented reforms, new ones which have been created with the focus on sustainability. There's a very interesting report by Jetro. Abhishek, I don't know how much time do I have. Do we have 5 minutes?
You please go ahead. Please go ahead. All the time that you have. I know you
Thank
are
you.
actually squeezed for time. Go ahead.
I picked up this report here because there was a discussion on a separate session on this one. Jetro, the big Japanese export agency, had surveyed 7,000 corporates in November last year. And in this entire region, which includes Vietnam and our neighbors, India was number 1 in steps towards decarbonization. So, we had this separate lounge on sustainability where all these discussions were taking place. We also had one on inclusion, and these are all our government ones, which is what we were showcasing India's strength, which is bottom up, our artisans, our craftsmen, and what India itself is doing towards inclusion. And let me tell you that it used to be completely filled with people at all points of time to see the innovation which is happening on the inclusion side, the circular economy, etc., which was happening. So just to put a little step back and see what was happening. One, I think India probably is the only beacon of hope, and not just the beacon of hope, but it is also that ray of sunlight, as somebody put it very well, in a very dark and gloomy world. There were discussions all around about recession. There was discussions of joblessness. What is the world facing through? And think about it, as everyone said, India is the only large economy which is still growing at 7% plus. The only large economy which moved beyond the COVID effectively, very quickly, and remains the fastest growing large economy on the planet. Let's look at some numbers on this one, Abhishek.
Please do.
For our entire FDI since independence is about close to 950 billion. What we've got in the past 8 years itself is over 530 billion of that. For 8 consecutive years, every year, we've set a new record for FDI. And even in the midst of that lockdown, which we had in 2021-22, you received your highest ever FDI in your history, over 83 billion, over $84 billion. But more interestingly, Abhishek, and I remember mentioning this to you, and this is what has been a major discussion point in Davos, which has given a lot of confidence to the global community, that it has come from over 162 countries. It's a global record.
Right.
And please remember, FDI is not just about that dollar coming in. That FDI is about trust in India's leadership, trust in India's potential, trust in India's future, and most importantly, trust in India's entrepreneurship and trust in India's ability to partner and deliver.
All right.
And let you get the second leg of it, which was again being discussed here. It probably now partners with the world on the largest bouquet of opportunities available. We've got that FDI in 61 countries, and that was another point of discussion which has been happening here, that how effective have these PLI schemes been in getting this FDI? How effective have the ease of doing business efforts of the government? How effective have now been the states which are coming up and getting attention globally? And that brings me to my third leg. And to my mind, the most gratifying one which I have is that today, 31 states and union territories of India have received FDI in the past 8 years. Never before.
Right.
The strength of India, Abhishek, is that there's a new India which is emerging, which everyone is talking about. And this new India is now bottom up. It's not just limited to a few growth engines in a few states.
That's fantastic. I believe those 31 states would include some of those in the Northeast as well. But
absolutely,
my question is, I would be surprised if there in Europe, PLI is not being seen as some kind of subsidy, by the way, Mr. Bagla. But my question is, there is this acknowledgement that India is resilient and India is the island of performance in this global situation that we are seeing, the Europe situation with the war and even China wobbly, for example. Could you give us some sense vis-a-vis China, how was India seen at Davos this time?
So the first bit, which is what I noticed this time in Davos, in India, we're often talking about China plus one. The sense which we get here, it's not just China plus one. It's just India now. It's plus one anywhere. The point that they want to diversify beyond where they are, that is for each and every corporate across the globe, India is now featuring right up there. So it is beyond just China plus one. There is this interest. The other thing which what they're wanting is that look at India's future, 15th August 2047, when we turn 100.
Right.
At that point of time, you'll be 1.6 billion of human resource. 21% of the world's middle class will be in India. Look at that market opportunity. And I think everybody is woken up to it. You've had all global channels talking about how India becomes number one in human resource. Right. With numbers of human resource in the next 12 months.
Right.
And the other element of it is, don't forget, 20% of the world's skilled workforce will be from India. And that's another big point which is happening. In fact, this was a very interesting roundtable I was at when another senior government official from another country in Europe was mentioning how they are looking at India to help them in their efforts towards skilling. And not just skilling, but helping them with the requirements which they have. So that is the other element where India's leadership is coming on. But Abhishek, I must tell you, the second very interesting trend which I noticed here this time, the entire trust and faith in India's leadership, in which how well India was steered during the past 36 months, especially during the pandemic. There are now discussions on how India's, and they're looking up to India today to see its involvement in trying to help the world come to solutions which are just not business, but even beyond business.
Right.
And I had in one of the panels, the head of a state from a South American country clearly state that even on the geopolitical side, they're looking at India's leadership today to provide some kind of solutions and bring all these issues which they are facing on geopolitics to some kind of bringing it together to a consensus.
Right.
So there is a new emergence of India's acceptance and acknowledgement in its leadership today. And the kind of investments we are looking at is just a byproduct of that.
All right, so the economic leadership might still be some time away, a few decades away. Are you indicating that there is a sense that India is providing some kind of thought leadership and political leadership, perhaps, to the global geopolitical situation?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying, and that's what the discussions here are happening. They've already started looking at the steps which India has done, and now they're eagerly looking forward to India to take on to the next steps to bring those solutions. But you were talking on the economic side. I think the acknowledgement, one, that there is a mass which we are talking of. Tell me another country which in 90 months has moved ahead of Russia, Italy, Brazil, France, UK from number 10 to number 5 as a size of a GDP. In the next 12 months, you're knocking at number 4, which is Germany. And what we are looking at ourselves, that even if we continue at the pace where we are
Right.
looking at anywhere around 35 trillion in the next 9,000 days. So Abhishek, this juggernaut's movement and momentum and velocity is now what has brought the entire world its attention.
All right, Mr. Bagla, there must be some fantastic side stories. Okay, my editor-in-chief Arnab Goswami, he has a question for you. I could take the mic to him actually. Mr. Bagla, just hold on. He has a question for you.
Hi, Mr. Bagla, Arnab here. First of all, I
Yeah,
just want to say that we feel so proud when we see amazing technocrats like you, lead, the Indian surge and so strongly, so confidently in Davos. I think it gives us great pride. The Republic Dialogue, Mr. Bagla, that we are hosting is in Pune, city of great culture and entrepreneurship. And these are the growth engines of our economy and our society. And we are doing this Thought Leadership Summit today in Pune because we want to focus on cities beyond just the metros, the traditional metros. So do you have a message for our audience in Pune from where you are today with everyone who matters in the global economy in Davos to the audience here in Pune, which cities like Pune, which are the future of our country's growth engine, which will propel us to that 7 to 8 to maybe double-digit growth in the near future. Mr. Bagla.
Arnab, the two other things which are being discussed here is innovation in a big way and startups. And there was also gender participation. In fact, we at our own lounge had an entire roundtable yesterday on gender participation at senior levels. It was chaired by Minister Mrs. Irani. The hall was packed. And they were amazed at where India in gender participation is. And that takes me to the other point. And this is what, to your point about how they're looking at the new India, which is just beyond the big towns and cities. There was this another panel on startups, and we had our own unicorns which were presenting themselves there. These were fascinating stories of small town young entrepreneurs which have created globally acknowledged unicorns. And let me give you a statistic there. You remember in January 2016, the Honorable Prime Minister launched Startup India. We are a young startup nation. We're just about 72 months away from there. At that point of time, we just had about 450 registered startups. Today, we have 88,000 of those and plus, and everybody is looking at it. But I'll tell you what's more interesting than that. Today, we are number 3 in the world in number of unicorns, number 2 in the world in number of startups, number 1 in the world with new startups starting every day. By the way, I must tell you on the gender point, which I raised, that another interesting point, which was discussed just yesterday, that our women-led startup are growing at over 100% per annum. So you can see how Indian participation on that one, there's a big change. But the other interesting element, today, out of over 775 odd districts in India, I have a registered startup in over 688 of them. The story of New India is now bottom up with each and every citizen. And that is the amazing level, the big discussion here, which everybody is looking at. In fact, there was the investment promotion agencies of 28 countries got together on a round table just to study India's digitization program. Digitization has created that democratization of participation in growth, of being able to partake from the benefits of that growth. And everyone was here looking at how fast and impactful it has been created. Just from July 2015, when we were 123 in the world in terms of per capita data consumption, last year, India was number one. India consumed more per capita mobile data than China and the US put together. 41% of the world's real-time transactions last year happened in India. 41%. We did 48 billion transactions. China was number two at 18 billion. And by the way, last year in October, we already touched 8 billion in that month itself. That means we are now at 96 billion run rate of the year. See how fast it is happening. And how everyone is now wanting to follow the Indian digital structure story which we have and wanting to adopt it for themselves. In fact, even we had a G20 panel, which has been working for the investment promotion agencies and including our invitee countries. And the focus now there is how we can help them with the same level of digitization and share with them our success story and help them execute and implement it. You know, each of these pillars are the core pillars of growth. These are the pillars of the future. And we have shown how in a short period of time, with this government's leadership, we've been able to bring these special initiatives completely based on outcomes and how these outcomes have been achieved in such a short period of time. I think this is what everybody is now acknowledging.
All right. So that was quite comprehensive. Thank you so much for that. I know you have to go for another session. Davos is still not over for you. My last question before I let you go, quickly. There would be some fantastic side stories of your 7 days there, of course, dovetailing with the India story. Please share just a couple of them, or even one perhaps, of the soft power of India perhaps that was on display at Davos.
I must tell you, one of our senior ministers just walked out of the lounge and the entire street was mobbed. Everyone was wanting just a photograph for them. The entire traffic was closed. That is the kind of everyone's focus on India today. And I must tell you, those were not just Indians, but people from across the globe just flocking to get a photograph or a selfie and blocking the entire traffic on that street.
All right. And was the Indian chai there at the Davos Square?
Absolutely. The masala tea was the hottest.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Deepak Bagla there, MD and CEO of Invest India, hawking for India, in fact, there at Davos World Economic Forum, joining us live from Davos. Thank you so much. And of course, we'll have a follow-up conversation when you're back.